Hi, welcome to the June edition of the Chocolatey Product Spotlight. On the first Thursday of every month, as you're probably aware, at 4 p.m. UTC, we chat about the latest releases from Chocolatey software from the last month. We've actually got another stream that will be happening in about 2 weeks on the 20th of June, which will be our monthly chat about news, gossip, and the general state of the industry, unpacking software, which will also be available as a podcast. My name isn't Paul Broadwith, as you may have noticed by my lack of accent, although I guess everyone says that. I'm actually James Ruskin, the senior solutions engineer. Nearly did it again. Here at Chocolatey Software. I'm really glad today to be joined by Gary Ewan Park. Gary, would you like to introduce yourself?
I can certainly try. Thank you, not Paul Broadwith. Happy to have you on the stream. My name is Gary Ewan Park. I am a principal software engineer here at Chocolatey Software, and I am excited to show you all of the new things that we have been shipping recently.
Yeah, we've had a fair few releases in the last couple of days and month, I guess.
It's been busy. Yes,
Yeah, we've had so everything from Chocolatey Central Management, Chocolatey GUI, and then we're also, I think, going to go through the really recent stuff from Chocolatey CLI, license extension, and agent. If that's all right,
that sounds fine to me. Yes, I think I have a demo machine to a point where I can show not quite everything, but certainly the lion's share of everything that we've been shipping recently. Yes, so happy to get started.
Okay, let's pop that up on screen then.
Perfect. So what I've got is for anyone that's not seen one of these before, what we tend to do is bring up the release notes for each of the products that we're going to be discussing, and we go through them. If there is something that we can demo, and then I'll jump to a session that will allow me to do that. And for the ones that we can't, then I'll just talk about them and explain what they were and for why. If there are any questions about anything, feel free to pop them in the chat, and my diligent co-host will keep an eye on those questions. And if there's anything that we can explain further, we can absolutely do that. So the first demo, the first release notes that we've got here is for Chocolatey Central Management. So this is one of those where there isn't much that I can demo, but I want to talk about specifically what this was for and the problem that it has resolved for some of our customers. So it was a bug fix release, and it is to do with duplicated deployment step. Let me try that again. Duplicated deployment step reports created for unreachable and unresponsive computers. So what we were finding was that there are times within Chocolatey Central Management that a computer can become unreachable, and it can also become unresponsive. And those two things seem to be the same thing, but we talk about them in different contexts. So an unreachable one is a computer that's never been reached, and an unresponsive one that was there and accepted a deployment step report, but then never reported back. But in each of those cases, there are mechanisms in place to attempt to report the current status into Chocolatey Central Management. And what we found was that we could duplicate and sometimes more than duplicate those reports. Now, the problem with that is that in a system that has lots of machines, then that duplication causes problems because we're essentially making more work for the Chocolatey Central Management to process all of those messages. So what this fix was all about was reducing the potential for duplicated messages, which means it's much quicker to process all of the messages. So this was a problem for at least a couple of our customers, and we went through a process of a beta with them to verify that everything was working as expected, and then we've shipped this 0.12.1 as the current latest version of CCM. So if you are seeing issues where certain deployment plans are maybe not finishing the way that you expect them to, it could well be that it's related to this issue. So either reach out to support if there's something slightly different, or grab the bug fix release and see if that helps out with the situation that you're in.
That's fair. And that's particularly good for deployments with a very large number of computers in, if I remember correctly. Is that
correct? Essentially, that's what it boils down to. There's a certain point that if you've got so many computers involved, that there's a tipping point just because the sheer number of those machines that you have could be unresponsive or could be unreachable. Whereas if you've got a smaller system that where all machines are online all the time, then this problem doesn't come up. It's once you get into that higher number node count with machines that are in those states that it starts causing problems. So yeah, definitely update to the latest. And if you're still seeing problems, reach out and we can see what we can do to help you.
Absolutely. And thank you to all of our wonderful beta testing customers.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that was Chocolate Central Management. The next one that I wanted to talk about was Chocolatey GUI, I think. Yeah, Chocolatey GUI. So this one was a bug fix release as well, and it's also one of those that I'm not necessarily going to try to demo because they're reasonably self-explanatory. But I also want to go through them quickly just to make sure that everyone is aware. So the first one there is Chocolatey GUI is not displaying error output when running as a non-admin through background service. There's a lot of things to digest there, but effectively what we're saying is that if you're logged into a machine as a non-administrator user and you happen to be running background service, so Chocolatey agent, effectively, background service through Chocolatey GUI, then sometimes, and only sometimes under certain circumstances, you wouldn't get an error message back from the installation attempt. So say you're installing a package and it happens to error, then what would happen in Chocolatey GUI is it would just come up and say, there was an error, and then blank space. It would say there was nothing else to report. So obviously that's not ideal. Doing the exact same thing directly from Chocolatey CLI, you would see the output. And it all came down to the handoff of the execution of the thing that's being done, the handoff from Chocolatey GUI to Chocolatey agent, and then ultimately to Chocolatey exe. That wasn't flowing back through to Chocolatey GUI for displaying purposes. Corey on the team dug into this and figured out exactly what the problem was. So happy to report that that has been resolved. And again, because of the complexity of having non-admin background service, Chocolatey GUI, I thought I'm not going to demo that because it would mean logging out, logging back in. No, I'll stick to playing it, right? If you want to see the screenshots of the problem, then definitely have a look in the link of the issue because there are screenshots in there that explain the issue. And if you're interested, go and have a look. The second one is Chocolatey GUI does not start if the config folder is missing in the program data folder. So this is one of those situations that Chocolatey GUI should, and on initial installation, Chocolatey GUI will check to make sure that that config folder exists as part of the installation. But if, for reasons, that folder disappears, now that folder shouldn't disappear, but if someone were to go in and delete it, then Chocolatey GUI would then fail to start. So what this bug fix was about was just making sure that if in the event that that folder is deleted for some reason, let's just recreate it and allow Chocolatey GUI to reestablish itself in terms of the configuration data that it stores. So it's a small bug. I didn't see that it was worth trying to demo that. But again, it's one of those situations. If you see it, you'll know it, and this is the fix for it. So this has been fixed in the latest bug fix release of Chocolatey GUI. Thanks to Corey and the team for putting all that together and getting that shipped. Any questions on that, James, or will I jump straight in to the next one, which does have demos? The next
No questions so far.
does have demos.
Yeah, and again, if anybody does have any questions, please throw them in the chat, and I will pass them on to Gary. So
perfect. Okay, so what we've released in this, so release day was yesterday. So we shipped 3 new product versions yesterday: Chocolatey CLI, Chocolatey license extension, and Chocolatey agent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all these things in the order that they are in the release notes, and I've actually got demos of most of this. So I'm just going to jump straight in. It was a fairly big release in terms of the number of the issues and in terms of pull requests that we have been able to include. It would be completely remiss of me if I didn't mention at least one community contributor who, quite simply put, was prolific in this release. Team members all know who I'm talking about, but that would be The Cake is a Lie, or The Cake is NAOH. I probably got the acronym round the wrong way at the end there, but it's the cake is a lie. They've been a long time contributor to Chocolatey, and we're very grateful for the work that they do. And in this release in particular, they had a huge amount of work sat in PRs, and this was a release that was able to rattle through those and bring those in. So I'm not going to say that the Cake is Alive was responsible for all the functionality that's in this release, but certainly the lion's share. So huge thanks to them for all the work that they've done. And if you have read the release blog post that I put out yesterday as well, they've already got another 5 PRs lined up for the next release as well, because they've been busy in new features and functionality as well. So thanks again to them. Now, the other thing I want to mention is that in future releases, what I'm trying to do with another sideline project that I work on is pull information about all the contributors that's involved in a release. And that's going to be part of our release notes. So there will be a section that it says, these are all the people that was involved in this release. We'll see their happy, smiling faces in their GitHub avatars. So I'm not discrediting anyone else that contributed in this release. It's just that the Cake is a Lie had so much contributions in this one. And then in future ones, I'm hoping to have information about all the contributors, whether that's they created the issue, that's whether they raised the PR to go with it, etc. I want all of that information to be in these release notes as well. So
Nice.
look forward
I always
to
really
that.
like that when I see in other projects. So that'll be really cool.
It is, and I've shown Paul a demo of what is possible, because it is almost it's on the cusp of being possible. I've shown him a demo.
Now, we thought that Gary's VM might have a trouble at some point, but to me, it looks like Gary's frozen. Well, while we wait for Gary to get back, I've got a wonderful joke about a bee that I'm not going to tell. I'm just going to ping him on the side. If anyone isn't seeing him frozen, please let me know. I'm unsure if I should take over, and no bee jokes. Okay, that's the feedback I'm getting. Fine, yeah, that's okay. Right, well, we've got Gary back. Hello.
Welcome. Hi. Apologies about that. My internet decided to go for a wee walk there, but I'm back. So I'm not sure how James filled that blank there. I'd be interested to go back and watch the stream to see what words were said, but I'm back. So
I think everyone's very glad that you're back. Yeah.
Right. So I was away to start going through the release notes and talking about what's in what we've done. So first up, we have in this release, we have marked at least one of the our commercial assembly. We have marked one of the commands that Chocolatey has as deprecated. The idea is that we're going to remove that in a future version. The one that I'm talking about, so I go up here, and if I attempt the Choco unpack self command, so it's highly unlikely that you've actually ever used this. The Chocolatey unpack self command is intended only for usage during the initial installation and provisioning of Chocolatey. So it's not something you would necessarily want or need to use. It's an artifact of how Chocolatey CLI used to be packaged and put together. It's no longer required, and we're going to remove it in a future version, in version 3.0.0. But we're highlighting this in the output now. So if you attempt to run Choco Unpack Self, there is a deprecation notice, and the documentation has been updated on the site to reflect that it has been deprecated as well. So I was going to dig into what it does, but I'm not sure if it. So Chocolatey has this concept of self-healing. So if, for example, I were to go into this folder here, and this is where we keep all of the PowerShell helper methods that Chocolatey has, right? If for some reason I were to delete one of these files, let's say, then running the Choco unpack self will self-heal itself and put that file back again. And it does that because those files actually reside
within the
so the unpack self is essentially exe and put them onto disk. So it's good, but it's also not needed. So we're removing it, right? So that's what that is. I probably talked more than I wanted to on that one, but that's the Choco unpack self is being deprecated.
And it's worth mentioning, as in the release notes yesterday, that if you do feel like you are using this, to please get in touch, because we
absolutely
would love to hear why.
Absolutely. So that's that. The next thing is there is a new feature where we are saving the software install location for future use. So what does that mean? So if I come up here and I say Choco install my favorite package, which is Winderstat, right? If I run that, what we ultimately see at the output of all of this, so once Chocolatey does its thing, it goes off, it checks for a package, it downloads it, and it installs it. That one of the things that Chocolatey outputs is that it deployed this to C program files x86 Winderstat. So that's where Chocolatey has established that that package has been deployed to. So we're actually now saving that information behind the scenes. So that information is now stored and it's associated with that package. So the obvious question is, well, why are you doing that? Lots of reasons. The first one is that is information that we want to be able to bring back to the user. So if the user wants to say, I've just installed that, but I now want to know where that was. I want to see details, or I want to see information about the package that I've installed, and I want to see information about where it got provisioned to. So there's baby steps involved in that. The first part is storing that information somewhere. So in the same way that Chocolatey stores the installation arguments, in the same way that it installs any registry keys that have been associated with the package installation, in the same way that it stores information about what files have been provisioned onto the system, we're now also saving where it got deployed to. So in future versions of Chocolatey, we can then show that information back to the user. It might be that we show it in Chocolatey GUI. It might be that we show it within the Choco info command. But in order to put all those pieces together, there is an element of baby steps along the way and building up on top of it. So now that we're saving it, we can pull it back later. Awesome. So this feature, it's got no visible output or no visible usage to the end user, but keep in mind that it's been done now, so we can start using it elsewhere in the Chocolatey ecosystem. So that's what that is.
Cool. I can see some cool ideas for that going forward.
I think there is. There's definitely some. Like I say, it's a common ask within Chocolatey GUI, for example, that they want to know where a package was actually installed to, or sometimes someone might miss. They've just run the command and didn't see this line, and then they've cleared it and it's gone, or they've closed the shell and it's gone. So being able to bring that information back and hydrate it back later on makes absolute sense in terms of that package installation.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what that is. The next feature is allow viewing package creation validation rules via new Choco rule command. So there's a couple of things in there. The first one is, well, what is a package creation validation rule, I hear you ask? Well, now I can tell you what they are, because I can run the new Choco rule command. And what it's going to tell me is that out of the box, Chocolatey has 4 rules that it applies during the act of Choco Pack. So what this means is that there's certain base requirements that a Chocolatey package, i.e. the new spec, the contents of the new spec, need before the pack will be able to be completed. So for example, there's a required element is missing. So if for some reason the user hasn't provided an ID element, or the ID element is missing, or they've provided a title element with no title in it, or worse, they've provided the title element, but it's maybe got just the standard templated contents in there, the templated contents that you get from running Choco New. All of those things need to be unique against the package that you're creating. So we've got 4 built-in rules that if, when running Choco Pack, it violates one of those rules, the Choco Pack will fail. So the Choco rule command has been brought in because now that we want to start letting people know more about these things, we can do that through the Choco Rule command. So Choco Rule will list out all of the rules that are currently in play, and there are different types of rules. So there's the rule is an error, or it's a required piece of information. It's a warning, or it's a guideline. It's an information or suggestion, or it's simply a note. So the what was I going to say there? Those tie up directly, actually, to the kind of rules that you get through what we refer to as package validator. So if you've submitted a package to the Chocolatey community repository, package validator has the exact same sort of rule construct. There's errors in required rules that mean that it would go immediately back to the maintainer of that package to fix. There's warning and guidelines that a package moderator might push back on and say, this is a good idea, you should really do this. How about you do this before we approve the package? And then there's the other ones that are, they would never stop the package going through package moderation, but they're general information and suggestions you want to go on.
I was going to say these will all look very familiar to our maintainers and moderators.
Correct. So this release of the Choco Rule command is kind of the baseline of starting to look at what the Choco Rule command can do for us. So we've got some ideas internally about what we want to see extended in the Choco Rule command, because there's lots of things there's lots of natural progressions that we can go with this to extend the functionality. But this is the initial release that has just Choco Rule command. The other one that we can do actually is we can do Choco Rule get -- name, and then we could do chcr001. So that just brings up the rule specific information. If there is any additional information that we can provide to the user about that rule, we can do it through the getting a specific. So that's very similar to what we've got for. You can get a feature, you can get a config value, you can now get information about a specific rule.
Sure.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to show was, if I go ahead and install this extension package, and I'll talk about that in a second. So I'm doing Choco install Chocolatey Community Validation extension. So this is something that was driven by Kim on the team, but with this extension installed, it actually brings down its own rules in terms of doing Choco Pack and Choco Push. But because of the way that the rule command is instrumented, any rules that are in the system now flow into the Choco Rule command. So the extension package that Kim has put together then brings in all these other rules that are CPMR rules, which are Chocolatey package moderation rules. So those are the rules that it was brought down in that extension, and we now be displaying those and making them available through the Choco Rule command as well. The slight difference for at least one of them being that if I do CPMR 0022, where the other rule had an empty help URL, this one does have a help URL because we have a link to a documentation page for it. So we've got a backfilling job that we need to document the internal rules, or the ones that we ship with Chocolatey, to then provide a help URL for additional information on that rule
if they were
and how to validate it.
Yeah.
Sorry, say that again.
I was going to ask if they the names were Googleable, and I know the ones in the moderation thing are, because as you can see, it's the end of the
correct
URL.
So
I wasn't sure about those first four.
So no, these first four at the minute, those are they are undocumented on the doc site, but we have an open issue or at least an internal task where those need to be documented, and then we will update the rule command with that help URL to then allow people to go and find out more information about it. So that all that's going to flow through. But like I say, this first release of the Choco Rule command is really just setting the seeds, again, building blocks in terms of what we're providing here. But there's definitely more ideas that we have in and around the Choco Rule command and how it can help with package creation and ultimately improving the quality of the packages that are pushed through to the Chocolatey community repository. Yeah, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, no, it's Stevie said he has thoughts and opinions, which is not a terrifying phrase, and I'm sure he's not writing feverish ideas down right now.
Indeed. So that was that second feature there. The next one is I'm going to talk about this one a little bit. The first bug fix here was all to do with the install Chocolatey install package commandlet, right? I'm not going to show this in action because I just don't want to. It's as simple as that, right? This particular bug fix was handled by Corey on the team, so thanks to him for sticking with it. This was a reasonably long-standing issue that ultimately had 4 separate PRs with different ways of fixing the problem, but it was quite a unique scenario where, under certain circumstances, the install Chocolatey install package commandlet would append an extra trailing space onto the end of the command that is ultimately being executed. And because of the sensitivity of the the underlying installer, that extra space would cause things not to work in the installer. So it was quite a constrained problem space.
And people worked around it.
And people worked around it. There were workarounds, and like I say, there was 4 separate people put in PRs to fix it. And one of the issues that we had with it is, well, we want to be able to test this so that we don't regress any of this.
Yeah.
So part of the problem was putting in place some tests within our infrastructure so that we knew that we knew that we fixed it, and B, that we knew that we weren't going to regress this going forward. So there was a lot of background work that ultimately all fell on Corey's shoulders. So thank you to him for doing that. Like I say, I'm not going to try and show that one in action because I don't want to. This is as simple as that. It's not a fun demo, but it is ultimately fixed. The original issue has been tested, at least in as much as we can, and it's known to be fixed. So that's that one. Now, the next 2 bug fixes kind of go together, and it also is related to an improvement that we've got down in the next section. So I'm going to put all those together, and I'm going to talk about this thing called install Chocolatey path. Right now, for the longest time, Chocolatey CLI has had a install Chocolatey path commandlet, and the sole purpose of that thing is to take a path, a location somewhere, and add it onto the path variable on your system, whether that's at the machine level, at the user level, or at the process level, right? And you would say, oh, that's great, right? And then we would see people using the install Chocolatey path, and we as moderators would suggest, well, as part of the installation, you're installing Chocolatey path. You need to uninstall that Chocolatey path when you uninstall the package. And then you would just say, well, we'll just use the uninstall Chocolatey path commandlet. And you would be wrong, because there wasn't an uninstall Chocolatey path commandlet. Now, there were some community-driven efforts to provide an uninstall Chocolatey path, and that's great. But what we've provided now is we've provided an out-of-the-box uninstall Chocolatey path commandlet, and we've also fixed the bugs that were associated with the install Chocolatey path, because there was a whole scope of work, and I'm not going to go into it in too much detail. But it's future-proofing the way that we're going to do things in Chocolatey CLI, and this scope of work allowed us to dip our toes in the water in terms of how that's going to be done. And I'm happy to say that thanks to Rain on the team, all of that has come together. And what I want to show that in action now. So I'm going to grab a command that I've got over here, and I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to go back over to my PowerShell. And over here, I'm going to run the command choco install add path. So add path is the package that I'm using for testing. I've got it in my C packages folder, because that's where I've got some of the packages for this demo. And I'm passing in the parameters that is path test and path C test, and at the scope of the machine scope. So to prove that I'm not doing anything wrong here or cheating, if I go over and look at my environment variables and I look at my path variable, then there's no mention of C test there anywhere. So if I go and install this, no wavy hands, nothing up sleeves, nothing, right? So if I now do environment variables and do path again, we'll see that C test has been added. So the bugs that were there associated with scope machine, those have been fixed. But the more important one is if I come over here and run the equivalent, uninstall command. So if I do choco uninstall add path with the same path C test at the scope of the machine, and I let that complete, and if I come back over here and I then look again at my path variable, then C test is gone. Okay, so the obvious question might be, well, I was already using the community uninstall Chocolatey path commandlet. Where's that one gone? Simply put, the way that we've introduced this new commandlet into Chocolatey CLI is that our our being Chocolatey, our one will take precedence. So unfortunately, if you were using and you were relying on a specific function or feature of the uninstalled Chocolatey path that isn't in our one, it's no longer going to function the way you want it to. There are ways and means of bringing the old one back again, but that's a conversation for outside of this demo here that we've got going on.
Yep. Nice.
So if you are running into issues where our uninstalled Chocolatey path is no longer doing what you was doing before, I would ask people to jump into the Discord and let's have a chat about it. But ultimately, what we wanted to do is we wanted to provide first-class support for the uninstalled Chocolatey path, which has been a long-awaited addition to Chocolatey CLI. So that's now in. Okay.
Awesome.
Whew. Moving on. So we'll go into the improvement section. The first one is allow all packages from a source to be installed. And let me explain what's going on here and for why, right? So
Sends
hopefully,
terror into my heart, but I know that it's not. There's no problems here. This is fine.
exactly. So hopefully everyone is familiar with the concept of Choco Upgrade All. So Choco Upgrade All will go through all of my currently installed packages. It'll check to see if there are any updates available, and if there are, it would upgrade them all. But what would happen if we were to do Choco Install All and run that? Well, bad things would happen if you did that against the default sources, because literally over 10,000 packages would be attempted to be installed in one command. So Choco Install All against one of the default sources, so CCR, etc., Choco Install All is not going to work. However, if internally you have your own source set up, and that source is already pre-configured with a set of packages that you want to install on every machine. So for example, if I were to do on my machine here, I've got an all packages folder. If I do Choco install all against that all packages folder, then that does make sense because I own that folder. I own what packages are in there. And at this point, Chocolatey is just going to go install all the packages that are contained within it.
Yep.
So there's definitely some use cases there for I've got an internal repository. I've got a bunch of pre-sanctioned packages, and I just want to do Choco install all.
Yep.
Now, the way that you might have done this before is using packages.config file, where you've preset up all the packages you want to do. So you could just do Choco install packages.config. This just gives you another option for doing that using an internal source that you own.
Absolutely. Great if you had a baseline repository for the stuff you want on all new machines, or a great idea would be having, I didn't consider a folder, but you have a USB stick with Chocolatey, an install script, and boom, you're offline and you can still install a bunch of stuff.
Exactly. The typical use case would be your own internal repository. I'm lazy, James, as you might know, and I haven't got a repository here. So I just created myself a wee folder and used that as my repository. But you absolutely could do it within a repository, yes, as well. Okay. So the next improvement is allow the ability to add configured sources when using the -- source option. So I've got an example of what this is and what this is trying to achieve. So if I were to run Choco install VLC from a source that's called missing dependencies. So in that folder, all I've got is the VLC package. So what Chocolatey is then attempting to do is it's attempting to find the dependency that is the VLC.install, right? So why is this important? So if you're testing a package locally, then typically the thing that you do is you would do -- source dot. So you say, in this folder, I've got a package, I want you to test it. And if your package you're testing has a dependency, then that command's not going to work. So what you would have to do is typically go back to here and then do dot : that's not even a dot, that's how bad this thing is. .:https community.chocolatey.org, yada yada. You would have to put all of that stuff in there to then use those two sources to get all those package dependencies in play. So what we've put in instead is you could do that command, but you could also then just do -- ignore Where's it gone?
I think you just...
Did I go past it?
Yes. There we go. Oh, no, that's not it, is
No,
it?
that's
It's
not
not...
sorry, it's not
it's not
ignore. It's
ignore.
include.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's
Too many ignore
include.
commands
That's why,
today.
right? There's a new option. I got there eventually. There's a new option that is include configured sources. So what this is going to do is that any sources you've already got configured, that might be the CCR, that might be your own internal repository, it's going to grab all of those and put them together with the source that you're explicitly adding at the command line there. So now the Choco install VLC is going to work because it's using the VLC package from my local folder. It's then looking for the dependencies on all the other sources that are available. So at that point, it finds them and it's able to download them. So it's quite a... you could argue that just doing .:chocolatey is as quick a way of doing it. But if you can remember what the option's called, then you have got tab completion, and you can just do -- include, hit tab, and then it'll complete the rest of it for you. So that's what that is. Okay. This next one here was the one that we've already spoken about. So that's the addition of the uninstall Chocolatey path function. So we're not going to go over that again because we've already discussed it. This is an interesting one. So verify the checksum of a package before installation and fail if it's not matched. So what's this talking about? So anytime you do an installation of a package from a remote source, so be that a Nexus repository, CCR, etc., typically, now not always, typically the server is going to also include information about a hash for the package, the nutkeg file. It's going to include that hash as part of the response that it got back. Now, previously in Chocolatey CLI, that information was brought down, but nothing was done with it. So what this improvement is doing is it's then going to say, do a verification against the actual nutkeg that's downloaded to the hash that the server provided. Now we've put this behind a feature toggle, so it's not enabled by default. But if you were to do Choco feature enable use package hash validation, the next time you attempt to do an installation of a package, so I've got another command here. Now, please ignore some of the command options that I'm putting on here because they're for a later demo, right? But the point of what I'm trying to show is this one, right? So ignore Bill and Bob because they'll come up later, right? So Bill and Bob are later. So I'm doing a Choco install WinRAR, but I'm also doing it with a debug flag because the output that says the hash validation is happening is actually a debug function. So we don't output that to the command line. So I'm having to show the debug output so that I can show you the actual output. But if I scroll up here, now the WinRAR package has quite a big script in it. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of scrolling. So I scroll up past the package where the package was actually running. If I go up to here, then here, this command, this debug output says package hash matches the expected hash. Now that wasn't happening before I enabled that feature. We were just taking the nutkeg from the server, unpacking it and installing it. But now what Chocolatey is doing behind the scenes is it's taking the hash from the server response, doing a hash of the nutkeg, and then comparing the two. And if those two things don't match, then Chocolatey will fail the installation. So from a security point of view, it's just another layer of security validation that the package content has what is expected from the server. So I know you were showing something on the screen there, James. Was there a comment or?
That was from a moment ago. Stevie was just saying that if you're curious about how Gary's tab completion works, go and have a look at the docs because
perfect. Yes,
there is a way to inject that into your profile, and it's
yes,
pretty simple, but it obviously has some nice benefits.
perfect.
Sorry.
Okay, so that is hash validation. It is a feature that is disabled by default at the minute. In future versions of Chocolatey, we might choose to make that on by default. But for now, it's an opt-in. So if you're security conscious, you can absolutely enable that feature and take advantage of those hash validations coming down the pipeline.
I imagine we'll be recommending it to our environment
Yes,
customers.
I think there's definitely a reason. I don't think there's any reason to not do it. If for some reason the server isn't returning a hash as part of the response, Chocolatey will just ignore it because there's nothing to compare it to. And by enabling the feature, all you're going to do is to take advantage of the fact that if there is a hash in the server response and it doesn't match what you're installing, then it will fail. Right. So there's no real reason not to do it. So it's off by default at the minute, but in a future version, it might be enabled by default.
So why not get ahead of the curve?
Exactly. So the next one is show remembered arguments for packages, right? So this is where I'll refer you back to Bill and Bob, right? So if I then do choco info WinRAR, wasn't it? It was WinRAR package, and it was -- local only is what I'm going to do here. What we're showing now is in the output from the choco info command. So the choco info command provides details or more details about a package that's installed. And the reason that I've used the -- local only is because Choco Info also works against remote sources if you don't have the package installed. So here I'm telling Chocolatey to specifically look at the installed package. And at that point, it also reaches in for the remembered arguments. And what we can see here in the output is these are the remembered arguments that were passed in at the point of installation. So this is the one that I specifically put onto the command line. I said -- params Bill and Bob.
Yep.
But it also has the cache location because Chocolatey by default has a cache location. You might not know it, but it does. And so it's captured that the cache location was set to this at the point of installation.
Interesting.
Now, Chocolatey GUI has had the ability to show remembered arguments for quite a while now. But what this is doing is bringing it into the command line as well. So you can get that information from the Choco info command going forward.
That could be very neat for some debugging if you're wondering why a package isn't installed in the same way as it previously.
Correct. So there's one of these situations again that what we do with remembered arguments, it's got arms and legs in terms of what we could do at the command line with remembered arguments. But for now, what we're surfacing here is the information about the arguments. Now, I should point out that if any of those arguments that were passed in at the command line are sensitive in nature, like a password, like a -- package parameter sensitive, those are not going to be rehydrated and shown here. If you have got a sensitive variable, then it will appear in the list, but the value will then have redacted values written there. So it provides the information that information was provided at the command line, but we don't rehydrate the potentially sensitive variable for display purposes. It will remain secure.
Yeah, as you'd hope.
Indeed. Okay, so that was that one. Time we got. We're doing okay. We've got 18 minutes left. So, add the source URL where the package was downloaded from to the output from the Choco install and Choco upgrade command. So, what is this one? This is one that's been asked for a while. So, I'm happy to see this being added. So, thanks to the Cake as a Lie again for putting this in place. But if I just go ahead and install 7zip.install, what we're going to see in the output here, right at the top, is downloading package from source blah. So if you've got multiple sources in your environment, then it's depending on variables, let's say, we won't go into it too far, depending on variables, which source that Chocolatey decides to choose from might change. But where the package is actually, where the nupkeg is actually downloaded from, is now a captured piece of information, and we know that. And so the output is going to show that information and be able to store that against the package again. So again, it's one of these building blocks because that information is useful information that might be hydrated elsewhere within the Chocolatey environment. So again,
so if we had a packages config, for example, it would be great to be able to.
Correct. So now that we have this in place, we can do stuff with it, and that stuff is information that we can put places, whether it's in the packages.config file during an export, whether that's within Chocolatey Central Management. All of this information can then become available to put into these places for usage and knowledge of where a package was installed from. So it's entirely useful, and I'm happy to see that going in. The next one is actually it's the same thing, but for multiple commands. So I'm only going to show one of them. But what this is talking about is enhanced exit codes. So first of all, let's talk about what an enhanced exit code is, shall we? So let's start. I'm going to use the API key command as the one that I'm going to use as the test one.
Mm-hmm.
But if I go over here and run Choco API key add -- source, my website. My website is not a NuGet source, so don't try and install packages from there. It's an example. And the key is obviously Bill because, well, it's Bill, right? So we've added an API key. If I were to run last exit code from this command, it'll tell me it's a 0. Now, 0 typically means everything worked correctly, right? Nothing failed here. And that's what you would expect from running Chocolatey API key because I didn't have that API key previously in my system. So now if I run Chocolatey API key, I'll see that I've got one authenticated API key, right? Now, if I were to run the exact same command again, Chocolatey API key add, Chocolatey will correctly tell me in the output that there's nothing to change. But if I run last exit code, it's still going to be 0. Now, depending on what side of that proverbial fence you lie in, that's now a lie, because the previous command exited with 0 because it added correctly. But this time around, it's exited with 0 when it didn't do anything. So the enhanced exit code functionality within Chocolatey is allowing you to make a distinction between those two scenarios, right? So if I come over here and grab another command, so I don't have to type it out, and I'm going to enable the feature that is to use enhanced exit code. So again, this feature is disabled by default, but you can enable it at your heart's content. And if I run the same command that is to attempt to run to add that API key again, it'll correctly tell me again there's nothing to change. But this time, if I run last exit code, I'm going to get it 2.
There you go.
Indicating that potentially it was an error, because some people say that a non-zero exit code is an error. However, if you were to look at the Chocolatey API key help output now, and scroll back up to the top where we spell these things out, then there's normal operations. A 0 was successful, -1 or 1 an error occurred, or 2 there was nothing to do. But it's only available under an enhanced exit code, the enhanced exit code feature. So for all of these commands, Choco API key, Choco config, Choco feature, Choco pin, Choco source, Choco upgrade, if there's nothing for that command to do as part of its execution, it will exit with an enhanced exit code that if you have the enhanced exit code feature enabled, it will output that enhanced exit code. So why do we want all of that? Well, depending on how you're...
Sorry.
Say that again?
Because text parsing is sometimes annoying.
Well, exactly that. So if you are in... if you're taking Chocolatey.exe and you're scripting that in something, you're putting it into Ansible, you're putting it into Chef, the puppets, the DSCs, then looking at the script output to say that nothing happened in order to take other actions in your system is not nice. Being able to assert on an exit code for a known state, then you can have an else if but maybe in your script that says if the exit code is this, do something else. If the exit code is this, do something else. So we're just bringing that out to make it easier to put scripts together that show off this Chocolatey functionality. It's effectively what it is. So again, I think this was a the cake is a lie special where they just rattled through all of these and put it all together. So again, thanks to them for doing that. There already was pre-existing enhanced exit code for certain things, but this is just extending that enhanced exit code across other commands in the system. Okay. The next one I wanted to talk about, this is one that I know that people have wanted, and there's been lots of discussion in and around it, and it's to allow upgrading a pinned package without removing the pin beforehand. So I've got a demo of this as well. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to install a previous version of a package, and I'm going to pin it. So for those that don't know, the concept of a pin is you've installed a specific version of a package and you don't want to upgrade it. You don't want to have that package accidentally upgraded. So you apply a pin to it to make sure that it stays at that package version. Now you can do that in a number of ways because there is a choco pin command, but also during the install, you can pass in the -- pin. So I'm going to install the GitHub CLI utility, and I'm going to install it at a specific version because I then know that there's an upgrade available. Okay. So I put in the dash pin. So if I run the choco pin command to list out my available pins, I'll see that GH is now pinned.
There you go.
Okay. So then if I do choco upgrade GH, it's going to recognize that there is an upgrade available, but it's not, Chocolatey is not going to do it because GH is pinned. So what I would have to do is I would have to do choco pin, not ping, that won't work, but pin, choco pin remove dash dash GH. I would have to put that command in, I'd have to run that I'd have to run the choco pin remove command, then do the choco upgrade command, and then in all likelihood, I would have to run the choco pin command again to put the pin back in place. So all of that's a little bit, it's typing, right? And
Yeah.
nobody wants to type. So what you can do instead now is you can run choco upgrade GH ignore pinned, right? So we already had the ignore pinned option for other commands. So for a sake of consistency, we've used ignore pinned here.
I was wondering.
So we're going to do an upgrade of the GH package. It's going to know that there's an upgrade available. It's going to recognize that it's pinned, but it's going to bypass it. And we're going to get a warning at the end to say that it was upgraded anyway. But the net result is I then have, let me do this. If I do choco list, I can see that I have GH, the latest version. But then if I run choco pin list, I can see that the pinned package is still there. So I haven't had to do that dance with choco pin remove, choco upgrade, and then re-add the choco pin. So I've taken 3 commands and I've condensed it down to the 1 upgrade command with the dash dash ignore pinned. Now the dash dash ignore pinned will also work during a choco upgrade all. So if you're running choco upgrade all and you happen to have pinned packages and you pass in the ignore pinned, just be conscious that that ignore pinned applies to all the packages within that operation. So if you're doing a choco upgrade all and 5 out of your 20 packages are pinned, they're all going to be upgraded. So with great power comes great responsibility, as a famous poet like to say. It wasn't a poet. It wasn't a poet. I know what it is, but it could have adverse consequences if you just pass it into the choco upgrade all command. So just be aware of that. Be careful with that one.
I think being mindful around the choco upgrade all command and upgrading in general is something we generally do advise. We've got a question from Ryan.
I've just seen the question, and the answer. I don't know if you want to put it up. You can put it up on the screen.
Oh yeah, sure. Sorry. So, do you want to read the question off?
Can you update the pin reason through this process? I.e., the original so let's just break this down a little bit. With Chocolatey license extension, when you add a pin, you have the option of adding a reason for applying that pin. So what Ryan is alluding to is that if during this process the reason for repinning it is different to the one that was there before, can you update the reason during this? No. In order to update the reason, you would need to first remove the pin and then re-add it with a new reason. Would we want? I need to think about. I need to sit and think about that a little bit more, Ryan, to see if there's a use case in there that would make sense. Maybe we could talk about it. But
I think
for
I know
now,
why he's asking. But yeah,
say that again.
I think I know. I think if you pin with a reason similar to pinned on date X because this was the latest version available at that time, I can see why you want to update it with the upgrade.
Gotcha. So the answer to that no is the answer to your question. Could it be done? Everything's possible, but in the current form of this new piece of functionality, no, you can't update the reason as it currently stands. No.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan.
So that was that one. So the next 3, I haven't got a specific demo to show about them, but I'll talk through them and explain what they are. So update the OS underscore name environment variable to support Windows 11 and Server 2019 and 2022. So what this is referring to is that we have an environment variable that we, Chocolatey CLI, populate during the installation of a package. And we populate the OS name with information about the operating system that it's being installed into. Now, there was a bug technically, but it's marked as an improvement. What we would do, the population of that OS name environment variable on Windows 11 and Windows Server, etc., the higher ones, it would still show Windows 10 and Windows Server 2016. Okay, so we've improved that by making the population of that environment variable aware now of the version numbers that are specific to the Windows 11 and the Windows Server 2019 and 2022 ranges. So if you were making use of that OS name environment variable and it was wrong for what you were installing into, that will now be updated to have the right information about the operating system that you're installing the package onto.
PR is gratefully accepted for 2025.
Is that a thing yet? No, is it? I haven't seen that one yet.
Sorry.
Okay, that's a different day.
Different day.
So the next one, I wanted to show this, James, and the reason I'm calling James out on this is because James was the contributor who provided this particular improvement. So it's rerunning the install script after reboot should not be necessary. So with the uplift to .NET Framework with the uplift to the requirement for .NET Framework 4.8 in the 2.x version of Chocolatey, we brought with that a new installation script that if the .NET Framework 4.8 is not already installed, the installation script will install it, and then after a reboot, we would then run the installation script again to then install Chocolatey. And James came along and looked at that and said, "Well, I don't like that." Right. So what James has done instead is he's made a modification to that whole installation mechanism. So it will still check to see if .NET Framework 4.8 is installed. If it is, it'll carry on. If it's not installed, it will install .NET Framework 4.8. But at the same time, it will place the Chocolatey files on disk. So what that means is that, yes, you still have to do a reboot because .NET Framework 4.8 requires a reboot. But on reboot, Chocolatey.exe can be used straight away. So you don't need to run the installation script twice anymore. So it's a subtle change, but if you're installing it multiple times on fresh machines, it just makes that experience that much better because all the provisioning is done once with one execution of the installation script, and then a reboot later, you've got Chocolatey. So huge thanks to James for putting that together. I know there was a little bit of work and we pushed back on a few things during that process. And I think
as said earlier, as said earlier, if you want to see some interesting screenshots and a lot of confusion around a Windows Server 2012 error,
yes,
go for that issue.
Go and read this because the pushback was, well, James, have you tested this on this one, this one, this one, this one, this one? And the answer initially was no. But then he came back with, yes, I have. So it was a great PR, lots of discussion. I'm glad that finally got included. So thank you for doing that.
Happy it's shipping.
The next one to quickly talk about is improved package dependency lookup when an exact version is defined. I haven't got a demo of this, but I'll talk through it quickly again. So the way that we do package lookups in Chocolatey CLI, if there's a package dependency, previously it would essentially say, oh, there's a package dependency here, and it's telling me what the package version is. But during the lookup, we would promptly be, well, I don't need to know that version number. I'm just going to go and find all the available package versions of this package, this dependency package, and if one comes back that matches that version number, I'll use it, right? So for a package that's a dependency that has lots of package versions, you can imagine that that's a lot of package information coming back that's not needed. So instead, if the dependency is defined with a package version, we'll now look up directly that package version, and if it's available, we'll go and get it. So we're saving lots of round trips and lots of chatter between the client and the servers. So overall, that just makes things a bit better. I haven't got a specific version or demo to show because at that point it would require a Fiddler or Wireshark or something to show the outbound network traffic, and I'm not going to do that. So we're not going to do that.
We're running low on time anyway, so
we are running low on time. So I've got one thing left to show, and then we can close out. The documentation changes here. There was a mix of contributors for the documentation, so we thank everyone for that. There's nothing necessarily to show there, but that's just general improvements, both in terms of documentation in Chocolatey CLI itself and on the website that goes with it. So thank you for all of those. So that's a Chocolatey CLI release in a nutshell. Like I say, it was quite a big thing, big one. There was quite a few nice new features going in there. So thanks again for everyone for that. I then briefly wanted to touch on Chocolatey license extension and Chocolatey agent. The first thing I wanted to show is with regard to security again. So I've got a couple of commands that I want to run here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very quickly and very naively set up self-service on this machine. So I'm going to I'm going to toggle the environment variables. I'm going to toggle the features that are necessary to make Chocolatey go into background agent mode.
Yep.
And then if I attempt to install a package using that new command line option that we put in play, which was the ignore pinned, Chocolatey CLI via the background agent is quite quickly and decisively going to say that's not allowed, right? The reason for this is the -- ignore pinned is potentially circumventing a pin that maybe a system administrator has put on a specific package.
Yep.
So we don't allow the execution of that particular option when background service is in play. Now, there's quite a few of those arguments that are not allowed through self-service. You'll see them all listed here. And at the end there, you'll see that there's a new one, ignore pinned.
Yep.
So that new ignore pinned flag that we added for the purposes of the Choco upgrade is now not allowed when you're doing it through
agent or background service.
The reason I paused there, because I had a moment, this was meant to say Choco upgrade Python, because this option is actually for the upgrade command and not the install command. But it actually doesn't look in the context of the command. It just looks for an option being used that's not allowed.
That's fine.
So my demo failed there slightly, ever so slightly. I'm sure no one would have noticed unless I hadn't said anything. But so that's what that is. So from a security point of view, we've made that not possible through both Chocolatey license extension and through Chocolatey agent, and that's why there was 2 releases. The other, so jumping to this release notes, that explains everything that went out in the Chocolatey agent release. There's a couple of honorable mentions for other things on the Chocolatey license extension release notes, but essentially this is a duplication of the features or improvements that have been added in Chocolatey CLI. The reason for that I won't really necessarily go into, because it's long and sordid, and people don't need to know. But what it comes down to is that we had to make sure that that functionality works in Chocolatey license extension because we've introduced it in Chocolatey CLI. So the recommendation here at the top is, if you are using Chocolatey license extension for this releases, the recommendation is to update to both 6.2.0 and 2.3.0 at the same time. Okay,
and that'll make sure that everything that you expect,
and that'll make sure that everything works as it's intended to work. So any questions about any of that, feel free to reach out. If you're a licensed customer, you can reach out via Choco support. If you are a open source user, then definitely feel free to reach out via our community Discord or any of the other mechanisms that we use for communicating. But the Discord is where we're kind of centralizing conversation and questions from the community. So feel free to reach out there. I think that's all I had to show. So if there's any questions, now would be the time. I just do want to do a final honorable mention to the Cake is a Lie, who was prolific in this release. So thank you to them for all the PRs that they put in. Apologies on the pushback on some of them. But yeah, I'm excited to see what they and others continue to contribute into Chocolatey CLI in future releases. So I think I'm done.
Okay. So, I mean, yeah, just to continue barraging people with links, we're always looking for feedback on streams like this. So if you have anything that you'd like to tell us about the stream, please head on over to cho.co, that's ch0.co/stream survey, which I'll pop a QR code up on the screen for, and let us know what you think, what you'd like to see, all this sort of thing. As I said earlier, we're going to do another live stream on Thursday in 2 weeks on the 20th of June, and that'll be on Twitch, YouTube, and just about every other service that you've found us on today. We'll be talking over recent news in our sphere for the Software Unpacking podcast/stream. We hope to see you there. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.